that's all part of autonomy, and it is something that you have to experience. And I think we're all kind of going through a change where we're coming out of this scarcity mindset society, and we're starting to believe that, oh yeah, there is abundance. Yeah, we can do this. It's not so much about like being afraid or fearing failure. Those are all just bad perceptions that have been programmed into our heads that we can just sweep away like the trash, and then become incredibly valuable people to ourselves and each other. And
I'm moving house today. It's been 2 years, 8 months and 28 days, and I've got to say that as I step off the bus for what could be the last time spent as sitting in your boss supermarket queues, etc. And I have to say though, it's only today that I'm glad to be leaving. I really will miss the when Santa
listening to truthconduit.com with Chris McMillan.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Chris McMillan, another episode of truthconduit.com, and I'm here with my buddy, Mike Nimetz.
Real pleasure, Chris.
I have to imagine all the crowd roaring, Mike. Mike, you're everywhere. So right now you've got your podcast. It's called Leadership, Ethics, and Organization. And you've got some really interesting people and always sharing some good ideas on there. You're also with the Raising Excellence podcast going on. You're part of Autonomy Unlimited. So I want to also talk about a few other side projects that you've got going on as well. The leadership podcast. You've got three aspects. You've got leadership, ethics, and organization. Why did you start doing that? Why those particular three aspects? What got you started with that?
Well, thank you, by the way, Chris. Really appreciate you asking me to be here. And I really like what you're doing, and I think you're an excellent host. And
I appreciate it, man.
Certainly. I really enjoy a lot of your shows, but why did I begin that? I think it's something that kind of, to me, has been something that I've had a great deal of experience with in regard to when I was in the military. I was on a platoon leader's tank, so I was a gunner on a platoon leader's tank, and so I got to watch leadership like firsthand. I got to experience it, and being that I was on a frontline unit in the summertime, we would get cadets and ROTC candidates that would come in, and so I would have an opportunity to work with West Pointers, as well as Officer Candidate School, OCS, as well as ROTC candidates, officers, young second lieutenants. And I got to see a great deal of how they practice leadership, what went right and what went wrong, why did that happen, and so forth. And then, as I got into my construction career, I took a leadership role. I was a superintendent and then a project manager and program manager. I had that opportunity to apply what I had learned to my own career in business. And, I felt like I learned a great deal. So I've got a great deal of experience in those particular areas. But, those are really three areas that are really kind of foggy for a lot of people. I think a lot of people think they know what leadership is, but the reality is, in most cases, they're following people that aren't very good leaders. And then when it comes to ethics, there's a great deal of misunderstanding about what ethics is. And so, initially I started off the show with the idea of just kind of asking these questions like, what is leadership? What is ethics? What is organization? To all of the different people that I know. And of course, the group of people that I've had the opportunity to get to know, primarily from the freedom movement and Ron Paul and Anarchapulco, has been one that, I'm just so thrilled to know a lot of these people, and the backgrounds and abilities that they have. It blows me away. So, when I do the show, it's really not like, it's not difficult for me at all. It's like, I'm so excited. I'm so curious. I'm so interested in what they've got to say. And for the most part, they're all, they've all got their own unique characteristics that make them a leader and demonstrate their ethics. And then, organization is one that is a little bit more difficult to fit in there, but everybody, it's organization is something that's like inside and outside. So how you organize your own life also kind of reveals how how the life around you is organized. And so it's an interesting subject to me.
Well, let's break it down a little bit, Mike. Sure. What do you think? What makes an effective leader?
Well, there's a lot of things, but I would say the first is probably just being the example, and putting yourself out there and, believing in what you believe in and doing the things that you think matter, and being able to, communicate and persuade other people to do things that are value, that deliver value. And then also be willing to humble yourself to have discussions about how could we do this better, because that's another element, I think, is just being a good communicator. And, again, this is an area that many people, really fall down on is what is good communication. And in a lot of cases, what we consider communication these days is really a really poor substitute for what could be excellent communication. But I'll be brief on that one and just say that's kind of the wrap up in a small package.
Yeah, demonstration is a big part. Just do it, and that's always been kind of what I've thought of as leadership, as being the example, rather than spend more time doing it rather than talking about it, which is something I'm always struggling with, because I'm always thinking the next project, I'm going to do this and that and this and that, and I'm not doing it. But it has to start somewhere, I could argue with myself. But
yeah.
So you'd say, just demonstration and good communication are the two key elements? Well,
I think there's also a courage element, because, you've got to be able to be courageous enough to kind of put yourself out in front, and say, this is something I'm passionate about. This is something I believe in. This is something that needs to be done, and be able to handle the scrutiny that other people are going to send your way. That, you're going to, and, in a lot of cases, you're going to have to fail. You're going to have to fail in front of other people and be able to, suck that up, learn from your mistakes, and continue to move forward.
A fear that I've had that's held me back from potential situations where I could demonstrate leadership skills is the fear of making the wrong decision. Is that I would say that's a fairly common fear. I suppose obviously it depends on what's at stake, but what else? Is that the main thing, would you say, that would hold someone back from becoming a good leader?
Well, shame, if you look at David Hawkins' map of consciousness, shame is like the most, the lowest level of consciousness. The right after that is death. So shame is definitely a big fear, that a lot of people struggle with. And, certainly when it, like if you look at the modern world and the trendiness that goes on, that's the trendiness is basically being perpetuated by people's fear that they're not going to be perceived as trendy, that they're going to be out, they're going to be outed as like the black sheep out of the group. And so shame is definitely a big fear that a lot of people respond to. And so, yeah, that is certainly
excellent point. And that brings me back to my experience of teaching English in Spain. The students that made the least progress, and this was I taught for many years, all types of people. The ones that made the least progress were the ones that always said, tengo vergüenza. When I said, look, you just got to speak. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. In this case,
Yes.
We're talking about language studies, but of course, this could apply to any area. But I did notice the ones that let the fear control them, and they would say, tengo vergüenza. I'm like, well, very good point. That ties in, so I can relate.
Well, I'll speak to that one because it's something that, I'm just humble myself in front of your audience and say that I've been living in Mexico for, 5+ years, and I still don't know, I'm not really well spoken when it comes to Spanish. And it's primarily because of that very thing. I consider myself, and I've done a lot of work to make myself, feel like I'm an intelligent person. And then when I go out there and try and speak Spanish, I feel like a total fool. And I'm just like, I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. I'm just not going to say it. I'm not going to make myself look like a fool. And to a large part, that's the thing that has hindered me from learning is the same fear, So I think we all have our particular fears in our particular areas that are weaknesses that we've got to overcome. But you're not alone. We're all in it.
Yeah. Let's talk about ethics for a minute. Now, you, in one of your previous episodes of your podcast, you were defining ethics is the reciprocal of trust. And you mentioned there's high trust communities and there's low trust communities. Can you give a couple of examples of what you meant by that?
Well, I think, that's, again, it goes back to kind of some of my experiences with the military and, what would be considered a crack sharp unit versus somebody like a undisciplined crappy unit. What's the difference? And there's a great deal of things, but primarily the number one thing is your standards. So being able to establish a standard, and then maintain a standard and communicate that standard to other people. That's essentially what ethics are, So like if I have a very high standard, like let's say, for example, Rolls-Royce has a high standard of quality, but you're going to pay $200,000 for that car because they've put a lot of effort into raising the expectations of the person that's buying that car. And that's essentially what ethics are for people. And then that translates into when I have a high standard and I communicate that to other people and they see that in me, then that gives them the opportunity to raise their expectations of what they can expect from me. And that's really the level of trust. So when it comes to high trust organizations, excuse me, autonomy is actually a great example of that, or Autonomy Unlimited in particular, because Autonomy Unlimited is a relatively new organization, but it's already demonstrating, an incredible amount of ability to be very flexible and anti-fragile because you've got people that are definitely learning to trust each other, learning to understand what they can expect from each other. And it seems like every day you just see the potential growing as as people start to learn and communicate with each other and understand what each other is capable of. And, for me, I kind of get to observe all that. And, with all my experience, with all the different companies and meetings and everything that I've been involved with practically every Fortune 500 company, or, quite a few of those, as well as, a bunch of different architect, engineering, and construction firms and all that, I've never seen anything quite like autonomy. And the potential is just explosive in my opinion. And that's really, the difference between a high trust organization and then something like, your typical government organization where there's very little trust, where everybody is, kind of feels like they might be threatened by somebody else. They might lose their job because they might say the wrong word to somebody and that might get them fired or something like that, or demoted. And so there's, that kind of low trust organization, not very much gets communicated. Certainly nothing about any kind of problems or opportunities that could be, jumped upon, because everybody's afraid. Everybody's afraid of like putting themselves out in front of everybody else to be judged.
Yeah, and all the waivers that you have to sign everywhere you go in society, because this is a lack of trust.
Right.
Because companies and entities have to protect themselves, sign this waiver. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. So,
Nassim
Nassim Taleb's Anti-Fragile, and I think the earlier Black Swan is a great example of, how do we build anti-fragile organizations? How do we build organizations that no matter what happens, they just continue to get stronger because they learn? That's a high trust organization. A low trust organization falls apart in that kind of situation. And that's why you have these black swans, is because everybody is basically, the society that we have is essentially being prepped for the black swan event, if it hasn't already happened here.
Yeah.
But, it's essentially because there is such a low trust, there's no inflexibility. It's incredibly fragile. And that's what we've kind of got in, society.
Just 1 second, Mike. Kids,
Sure.
Ryan, don't get on the internet. Get off the internet. Okay, don't get on the internet. Don't make any noise, please. All right? Sorry, Mike. Mike. Anyway. And then earlier, you saw me looking down at the floor. Is because the damn cat had something. It was like making all this noise. Anyway, I can cut that out. Okay. All right. What about organization then? I wanted to touch on that before we move on. And I do want to get back to autonomy and autonomy unlimited. But
Sure.
What does organization mean to you? Since you've been doing all of this, what are some hard lessons that you've learned about organization that you can convey to people?
Well, I think the number one thing is the weakness of hierarchy is something that most people aren't aware of. They think that organization is this one particular thing where they've got people on the top that have power and the people on the bottom basically have to listen and take orders. And that kind of a structure is one in which is incredibly weak and, very capable of being subverted. But that's really the only organization that people understand or have ever experienced in their lives. And so they really have no other concept of any other kind of organization that they could have. For some people that are, that have that probably experienced a good family life or organization, that like a fellowship organization or something where people are treated as equal, they might start to see the benefits of being in a peer-to-peer organization, but it's certainly something that is not taught. And so, like if you look at a hierarchy, it's really based upon exploiting people's weaknesses and using that to control them. And via that control, people gain power. But it's a very fragile power, because that organization is easy to subvert. And, so like you see organizations that are put together that have a great idea. Somebody comes up with a brand new cookie or something like that. And, all of a sudden all their neighbors and everybody is jumping on them, and they create an organization, and it starts to build into a big business. And then some corporation comes along and, they got the logo, they got the name, but everything else is gone. How did they do that? Well, that's because they didn't understand how to create an anti-fragile organization. They created a very fragile organization that, once somebody came in with some money, they just basically took it over and left them in the weeds, And so that's really kind of the basis for my, feelings about organization, and certainly one of the reasons that I, got involved with Malski in the Octalog idea, is because there has to be another option, and there's quite a few options actually. It's practically everything else.
Yeah.
But in particular, there's some understanding of some ways that we can really exploit the idea of organization in a way that really allows people to do the things that they love to do, and really be passionate about their work.
Help me out here. It was up until I started listening to the Peace Revolution podcast, I was, my idea of organization was pretty much the hierarchical system that has been embedded into us. And it was one of those episodes from the Peace Revolution where it was a military group, and they took away all the ranks. They took away all the roles, all the positions, everybody. And they said, okay, you guys have got to get together and go build this bridge. And they proved that they basically had no set of rules, no instructions. They said, go build a bridge. Do you know what I'm talking about? The story that I'm referring to?
I'm not sure if I'm familiar with that one off the top of my head.
The gist of it was that doing this military experiment, they proved that, people using their natural ability, it was more of a natural law kind of course of action. They got it done in a faster time than they would have had they followed the rank and order and you're doing this position, you're doing that. And it was fascinating for me. It really opened my eyes to, it was for the first time in my life, made me think, even on how to organize ourselves, we've been lied to.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, well, as a matter of fact, there's a book called The Power of Followership. And I don't know when it was printed. I think it was quite a few years ago, but somewhere along the way, and I think I was, probably, high school age, I stumbled upon it and read that book. And it was like a total different perspective from everything that I've ever heard. I'd always been somebody that admired leaders like George Patton and other kind of, typical leadership figures. But what it really demonstrated was, we always have an opportunity. When there's a leader that actually can lead, then really there's an opportunity to be an excellent follower, and really kind of learn from that. So what's the role of the follower, in that circumstance? And that's kind of the thing that we should always kind of be cognizant of, is that there's things that people can lead in, and there's things that people can follow in. And it's not something that's appointed by some title. It's something that we do every day, so I'm sure there's days that, your son brings like a bug or something that he knows more about, and that's his opportunity to lead, and so that's where you can basically back him up and say, oh, you're curious about this? Well, here, I found this book here, maybe that will help you. There's ways that we can play these different roles and incorporate them into our lives. And we don't need to think of them as positions, but as just roles and responsibilities.
Yeah. Very good. Very good, Mike. Yeah, there's so much to it. What was the name of that book?
I think it's called The Power of Followership, but I could be wrong on that. It's been been a while since
I'll find the link for it and add it into the show notes for this. So what about raising excellence? What's that about? What's going on there?
Well, that's been it's been a real learning experience for me, because it's kind of been an interest of mine, and I didn't exactly know how much of an interest psychology is an interest to me. But as I've proceeded through my life and my career and stuff like that, I utilized a lot of this stuff. I just didn't realize it was psychology. I think. I read Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, and that was kind of the first inclination that there's something about psychology that is important, finding your purpose. But, getting with the Raising Excellence crew, which is 5 other people that are all gifted in their own particular way when it comes to psychology and all the kind of different arts that are, revolve around dealing with other people and understanding ourselves and our own mentality, and then how that relates to other people. And it's been such an incredible learning experience for me, because I get involved in every discussion, and we go in all kinds of different directions, and we've had the opportunity to kind of explore each of the individuals' particular passion in regard to what they're pursuing. And it's just been one enlightening experience after another. So for me, I just totally treasure every opportunity with that. But we're actually, it's been one in which we're kind of trying to showcase what we believe is something important, and as well as our own skills. But we knew that we were just getting started. So we've kind of been, hashing out like how to do the show. What's a better way to do it? Did this work? Did that work? No, that didn't work. Let's try this. And so now we're kind of getting to the point where, we're going to raise the bar. We're going to do things. We're going to take it to the next level. We're going to really produce a show that's powerful. And then we've kind of got this concept of a documentary that's going to be coming out. And that, in fact, the first show in regard to this, and we're calling it, the documentary is going to be called The Artistry of Loving Relationships. But the first show is going to be, tonight. So this afternoon or evening, depending on where you're at, maybe morning. We're going to kind of discuss the idea on our show and kind of outline what we have in mind for this documentary. But it is going to be about loving relationships.
So on the show tonight, you're actually going to brainstorm ideas about the documentary, like as if it were a meeting behind the scenes.
Well, we've got an idea, but we want to kind of discuss it with the audience as well, because I think this is an opportunity to really kind of create the circumstance and kind of create the, what we were talking about before, like as peers, how do we help each other? We want to, ask our audience to contribute as well. Who are the people that are demonstrating the art of loving relationships? And, there's all kinds of different types of loving relationships, whether it be, a intimate relationship, or like a work relationship, or a educational relationship, or like a sporting relationship. Coaches love their players, players love their coaches. What are those examples, and how do we start to envision those things and give people the opportunity to understand that this is the way to live, to live with loving relationships, instead of what society is basically, asking you to deliver or asking you to embrace, which is, be a zombie, be fearful, hate everybody, always be conflicted, always be suspecting people.
Yeah, anything that's juxtaposed to what, the society is trying to embed in the people is a good thing, because let's face it, the biggest influencers of society are they want to destroy it basically for their own gain. And the first step is to come to this realization. Once you realize that, then then only then can people start really making personal progress and professional progress.
Well, I think that's one of the things that, like, if you look at television or the media or TV shows or any of that kind of stuff, look and see if you can find a loving relationship. You can't find one. They're all conflicted. They're all screwed up.
Well, you'd have
They're
to go
all
back to
twisted.
Leave It to Beaver and maybe the Andy Griffith Show.
Yeah, there you go.
Before the evil forces really started to get their talons into Hollywood.
Right. Yeah, that is an interesting subject as well, because if I love watching movies from the 30s and 40s, because like when I watch a movie today, it's like it's a freaking joke. It's just the characters are just so shallow and stupid. It just, and that's, in the 30s and 40s, they were trying to get people to watch movies and watch television and get people into the theaters. So they had to do compelling, acting and stories. Once that started, once they had people into the habit of watching movies and watching television, then they started steering people into, their own version of what people should be doing. And unfortunately, people have adopted those crazy ideals.
Okay, so you've got the artist. You're going to start working on ideas for your Raising Excellence podcast. You're going to be working on a documentary, The Artistry of a Loving Relationship. Then what is Vivo Inteligente? What's that about?
That's something that I'm here in Acapulco because I was at the 2015 in Acapulco, and to me that was a kind of a life-changing event. I came down here. We were just going to stay for the conference, and then we were possibly going to go, other places. We were still looking for a place to call home. I was pretty much at that point set on getting out of the United States. But when I got to Acapulco and I met the people that were here, something changed, and I was like, well, if somebody's staying here, I'm staying here too. And then over the years, as Acapulco became a kind of a stalwart event, I was basically holding down the fort, so like everything that happened in Acapulco in preparation for the Acapulco event, more than likely I was involved in some way, shape, or form. But it's with that in mind, I really feel strongly about building a community of people, and so that's kind of what I'm involved with now. Is I've got another organization I call Acapulco 24/7 365, which is like living the Acapulco lifestyle every day. And in fact, I call that the 24/7 365 is kind of a symbolic representation of a week's worth of living every day of the year. So to me, that kind of a life is one in which, you really get the most out of life every day. You really suck it up and really enjoy what life offers. And that's kind of what Acapulco offers to me. And that's, Vivo is my favorite Spanish word. It's that alive, living, breathing, full of energy, just, it's just a great word. And then Inteligente, smart, intelligent, and, living intelligently. That's what we need to do, and that's what we need to collect. We need to collect the people that want to live intelligently together, and kind of create the alternative version of what people could possibly choose. Because we've got another small group of people out there that have decided that they're going to set the standard for what people are going to expect in the future. And honestly, it's not just a predetermined conclusion. We do have the ability to make a choice, and it's really up to the intelligent people to get together and basically say, hold on, could there be another alternative future that we could choose? Does it have to be this dystopian nightmare? And that's really what Vivo Inteligente is. But, for me, Acapulco is the place that is kind of fertile ground for entrepreneur and voluntarism, because it's kind of a little bit like the Wild West. There's a lot of flexibility on what you can expect, and certainly you can take on a lot of responsibility for yourself. There's a lot of freedom. There's also a lot of responsibility, but the bottom line is that it's you can be your own sovereign. And then in addition, everybody's an entrepreneur here, and everybody's kind of got an entrepreneurial mindset. And being that it's kind of a tourist town, you don't need to like mine resources. It's all about knowledge and service. So to me it's really fertile ground. And so Vivo Inteligente is essentially like my offer to the intelligent people of the world that, hey, I've got a spot. I think it's an excellent spot. And then I'm also inviting the locals, hey, if we're going to offer a place to the intelligent people of the world, let's get ourselves prepared. So the local version is essentially kind of similar to an idea like autonomy, where you're creating kind of educational base where you can start to educate people to a point that you can start a company that can provide those kind of services to the kind of people that you're trying to attract.
I remember when I was in Mexico, what you said about everyone being an entrepreneur. And I remember just walking around the neighborhoods, and there would be some random backyard of some house, and they're sitting there, hey, come here. And they'll have a display of clothes or drinks or whatever. And you could just give them some cash and move on your way. I loved that. I thought that's what it's all about. And it made me sad that in the U.S., if someone tried that, they would have some clown in a uniform show up demanding permission, get your permit from the overlords. And it just makes me sad. It's definitely the forefront of the dystopian nightmare. Not the forefront. There are other places that are a bit ahead of the U.S. when it comes to the technocracy, but it's just made me sad. Mike, you're creating a course.
I am. Well, actually, I have, and this is actually my third version of the course. I call it Ethical Emergence 3.0. This is something that, again, it's kind of close to my heart, and it's kind of everything that I know wrapped up into a project that I call Ethical Emergence. And the reason I call it that is it really is kind of embracing your own standards and living your own life, and kind of creating the understanding of what is your own personal philosophy, and then what is your own personal practice, and then through that understand it's so like that's kind of like the I don't know if it's the left brain or the right side of the brain, but the logical side of the brain, that's really kind of building that, but then also kind of equating it to the artistic side of your brain, and like what is the art of your living, how do you artistically live your life, and if you put those all together, it's really the results, the outcome that is also raised. And so that's kind of a brief version, but go ahead.
I was going to say, what are some examples of what people could learn on the course?
Well, it really is primarily around the understanding that, what you get out of your life is really about what you practice in your daily life. And so the habits and practices and rituals that you put into your daily life are the things that are important. But those start in, I've got 7 different areas that I outlined, but the first is like journaling. Journaling is probably the best single habit that you could create in your life. And that's kind of why I start there. And then we kind of establish that as a habit. And then we work through the 6 other areas, which are meaningful communication, digging deep, which is kind of like understanding inductive and deductive learning. And then superpower groups, which is about how to work with other people, and some of the key techniques and habits to involving yourself with other people, and creating organizations that are ethical and trusting, and then methods and processes and mentorship, and then finally the last stage is being you, and being comfortable in being the person that you want to become.
Would this count as, like, I've got, see my little diary here, does this count as journaling? My little
Sure.
calendar, I can go back. I've been doing this for years. I've got these every year. I've got a different little notebook going back. I mean, back to 2008, 2009. It's fascinating to go through it and say, well, or where was I doing a year ago? Or more importantly, right now, like just yesterday, I could not figure out what I had planted in a certain row in my garden. So I went back. I had to go back through my journal, and I found that. I said, yes, because I always mark things in there. Those were the normal green beans. So
much, in the old days when people were educated, a lot of the professionals kept a journal or a diary, because that was kind of a understanding of their own profession. How they went about learning and improving their profession was through their ability to journal. And if you look back, even like World War II and stuff like that, a lot of the stories that come from World War II are from people's journals, because people wrote down what was going on in their daily lives. And that was, those things were important to learn, to understanding and learning, like where they were versus where they are now versus where they want to go. And, that's kind of one of the elements that's been totally kind of washed away. And although I know there are people that, advocate for journaling, bullet journaling, and it's a bunch of other things, but there's all kinds of elements to journaling that can go in a bunch of different directions. It's not just about the logical, writing down the to-do list and making sure I've got my goals written down and stuff like that. But it can also be about artistically writing, the version of your life that you want to achieve, or artistically recording the life that you've lived. And that could be passed on to, your children or your grandchildren or your great-grandchildren, or they could, just, who knows? You could become the George Washington of 2025,
I mean,
and,
who are the most famous journalists, we should say? Comes to mind Ralph Waldo Emerson, and Samuel Pepys. We got and help me out here. Who was the French guy that came to the U.S. back in the day?
Not de Tocqueville.
Yeah, I think so.
Alexis?
Yeah, you know who I'm talking about. Yeah, and so but through their observations, of course, Benjamin Franklin, it was extremely insightful. And and to think that is just one part of your course as well. I mean, that is really cool. That's just 1/5, 1/6 of the whole course. I know I should save this to the end to give you a plug in, but the course, is it available yet, or is it still? Are we still working on it? What's going on?
Well, it's the next course is starting the first week of August, and I do have a couple spots left. I my maximum is 10 people per course.
Yeah.
And I think right now it looks like I've got eight spots filled. So we got a couple left.
So how could someone get to your course?
Just follow the links to me, send me a message, or probably like my Mic on Fire on BitChute.
Yeah.
Probably find out more about that. Actually, I do have the website in development, ethicalemergence.com. We're still kind of working on that, but
I mean, I was going to ask you at the end, but I just thought since we're talking about it,
Sure.
when you because I want to summarize at the end every every angle that people can come at your work.
Yeah, well, this is one of those areas that I'm not very good at marketing myself, and that's kind of one of the reasons that I got involved with autonomy. But I'm learning fast, so
That's a good
things are definitely
segue into my next point, Mike. Let's talk about autonomy. For someone listening who doesn't know, what's autonomy and what's autonomy unlimited, and how has it been for you?
Well, it's another life-changing event, and I'm so thankful that I had the opportunity to connect and become a part of autonomy. But it's so I'm a second season graduate, and it's just been, I think I guess it's not even a year since I've been involved with autonomy, but it's been such a tremendous growth spurt for me because I've met so many tremendous people. But I guess the basic overview is an idea of how to become an autonomous individual that is capable of taking care of themselves and being responsible for themselves, and essentially not giving themselves any excuses, but utilizing and understanding the skills that we have to gain the most, to deliver the most value, to understand how to to exchange that value for other value in an ethical way. There are so many things about it that come to mind. I would say probably one of the things is moving out of the scarcity mindset into the abundance mindset. I think that's probably a huge challenge for a lot of people. And, the scarcity mindset shows up in so many different arguments that you see between people these days. If you didn't have that scarcity mindset, there's probably very little you'd have to argue about. And so, just the fact that most people don't understand that they're kind of giving themselves away. They're giving away that they're a weakness because they're in the scarcity mindset. But understanding that there's an option, there's a choice. You can start to understand that really the sky is the limit. We have kind of infinite potential, and so that means there's abundance. There are no limiting resources. The greatest resource that we've got is our own mind and our brain and our ability to harness our skills and our talent. And that's all part of autonomy, and it is something that you have to experience. And I think we're all kind of going through a change where we're coming out of this scarcity mindset society, and we're starting to believe that, oh yeah, there is abundance. Yeah, we can do this. It's not so much about like being afraid or fearing failure. Those are all just bad perceptions that have been programmed into our heads that we can just sweep away like the trash, and then become incredibly valuable people to ourselves and each other. And I guess I'll just leave it at that, because I could go on for a long time.
Okay, then autonomy, once people get through the course, then they have access to become apprentices in Autonomy Unlimited. Yeah. What's your take on that so far?
Again, it's another incredible opportunity. I've really had over the last month the opportunity to kind of get a good overview, participate in the meetings, understand what products and services are being delivered and how it's being done. And man, I can say it's just every day I'm just so excited. When I worked in the corporate world and construction and even in the military, I spent a lot of time dealing with a lot of people and a lot of meetings in all kinds of different areas. And, to me, going to a meeting in Autonomy Unlimited is like meeting heaven, because people are participating, they're giving out good ideas, they're talking about what they can bring to the table. There's so many things that have happened in just the last month that are like, we're transitioning into a new learning website. And to a large degree, I would consider that transition as completely seamless. Whereas if you were to try and do that in any other organization, especially a hierarchical organization, that would probably be a year or two exercise, and there'd probably be, half the people would be turned over because of all the conflict and problems that came about because of trying to do something different. We're doing that just on the side as we're doing everything else. And, and it's just incredible. So, it's a great example, and it's also an opportunity for a lot of the, the liberty movement that are entrepreneurs. This is a way, at least initially, to understand, how could you market your company better? How could you go to an ethical organization that is going to market your product in the highest form and try and develop the most trust between you and your customer? I don't think there's a better option out there.
Yeah, and let's break it down.
And as far as I'm concerned, that's kind of one of the things about autonomy. Is if I was going to recommend education to somebody that wanted to become an entrepreneur, I'd say autonomy. That's the number one. You got to do that.
And then Autonomy Unlimited, it's a separate company. It offers services. Now, Autonomy Course is actually a client of Autonomy Unlimited, technically. And apprentices. I mean, what do we've got? We've got copywriting. We've got media. Help me out. Speed, SEO.
Social media.
Social media is another one. What else? I can't think. Web design.
Well, it is kind of a consulting company, and it's essentially the idea of kind of providing content providers with a one-stop solution to a whole bunch of the problems that they've faced, and how to kind of create a value stream of delivering the value that they have to the people that want and need their services and products. And so I think it really is we're approaching it from the marketing or the ethical marketing and sales, but I think it's a consulting company that could grow in a great deal of directions, because it really does have the ability to encompass skill sets, across the board, and give people the opportunity that as they deal with Autonomy Unlimited, they're going to have access to these different skill sets and talents that could go in a lot of different directions. Benny Wills is kind of one of the key figures that's come into autonomy recently, and he's putting out courses and stuff along the lines of communication and how to do better at communicating with other people, public speaking, as well as meetings and professional environments. He's just got a whole line of experiences and skill sets that relate to all kinds of different things, and that's just one more asset that is really kind of out there and going to be available in very near future.
Yeah, it is. It's very exciting. And integrity is also a key element to autonomy and Autonomy Unlimited. Again, this was something that I was never taught, the importance of integrity. I knew what it meant, but did I? And it wasn't, again, until it was an episode of the Peace Revolution where they did a whole episode on integrity. I'm thinking, what? But again, this is key. This is key to this very important aspect.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I've got an interesting kind of story along those lines, because a couple of years ago, I did what I called the Great Anarchist Experiment at Anarchapulco. I had a workshop at Anarchapulco, and what we did is I gave people, an idea that, we can't, anarchist or voluntarist are, the idea is that there are no rulers, but there are rules. We can have rules. And so if we're ethical anarchist, then what are our rules? So we kind of had a workshop about what the rules were, and we went through a bunch of different possible rules that we could adopt, and we only could adopt one rule. And that one rule was, do what you say you're going to do. And that's really the definition of integrity, and that's such an important piece to the whole thing, but there really doesn't have to be a whole lot of rules, but there has to be some rules, and that's probably one of the primary ones, and it is so important, and that's kind of a rule that is self-evident, because if we do what we say we're going to do, it builds trust, and that trust leads to all kinds of other good things.
Ron Paul comes to mind. It was for that episode of the Peace Revolution, Richard and Lisa opened it with Ron Paul's final speech he gave before Congress before he stepped down. And I thought, what is this about? And what it was demonstrating how he stuck to his beliefs, his core values, all the way through his career until the very end, because it was one of the most amazing speeches that I heard. I've listened to it about 3 or 4 times, and that was his final speech before Congress. And maybe I'll include that in the show notes as well. But
sure.
Yeah, just so many.
Yeah, I definitely recall
value.
that being a really powerful speech. Yeah, I got introduced to Ron Paul in 2007. Watching that little debate between him and Giuliani. And he kind of stood his ground with Giuliani when Giuliani told him, you should take that back, and Ron Paul was like, no, I'm not taking that back. I'm explaining to you why this stuff keeps happening. We keep blowing people's shit up in other parts of the country, and that blows back in our face eventually, And
did you meet him down? He came down and spoke at Anarchapulco a few years ago. Have you met him in person?
Yeah, I've had the opportunity. I get to meet him quite a few different times, and I actually had an opportunity to interview him as a journalist at one point when we were doing a radio show way back in 2008. So I've had a interesting opportunity to really get to know Ron Paul over the years, and I can definitely say integrity is definitely one of his key features.
Well, cool, Mike. Let's summarize. Let's wrap up. Any final thoughts before we do some? Any final thoughts?
Well, I've mentioned that autonomy is a great place, and it really is the people that make the difference. And certainly, you're one of those people, Chris. You're uniquely you, and it wouldn't be the same without you. And so I am incredibly grateful that you're part of autonomy and you're doing the things that you do.
Are you referring to my lightsaber prop? Is that what makes me unique?
That's certainly one of them that could possibly be pointed to. But
I appreciate it, Mike. I really appreciate your support. I really do.
Yeah. Well, that's the. To me, I do want to encourage you to be the best that you can be and follow your dreams, because you make my life better, and I know you make a lot of other people's lives better because you're here, and that's very valuable. So thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I really am excited about everything going on. I'm feeling very optimistic about, despite everything that's happening. You could argue, there are people now, solutions are happening. Now, Autonomy was already working on solutions before all this mess kicked off, because, we all knew something was coming, because they've made it very clear for 100 years coming back that, their goals. So Autonomy is solutions moving forward. And especially nowadays, people are getting laid off, losing their jobs. There's going to be a lot of lost people out there. So, anyone who believes freedom is a good thing could be could qualify to get on the course. And if they can add value and they have integrity, we've got Autonomy, and then that leads to Autonomy Unlimited, which you're also involved with. I'm kind of summarizing here. What other plugins in? Where can people find you at Raising Excellence? At
raisingexcellence.live.
Yep, raisingexcellence.live. And it's crazy. You guys do that live every time,
Yeah.
Like, right, here, you and I, we're pre-recording. I'll go back, if my kid comes in the screen, no problem. I'll cut it, whatnot. But I haven't done live very often. I probably should. It would be more exciting.
Well, it's because we don't have that video production expertise. We just decided, hell with it. We're just going to do it live. And again, it's kind of like some degree of integrity. We're just going to let it all hang out and just do it however we got to do it, and learn and just be out there. And if we're going to fail, we're going to fail in front of other people. But our intention was to kind of create that trusting relationship. And so
it
wasn't really
a lot of post-production time, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's the other beautiful thing, and that's kind of what I do with my own BitChute channel and the thoughts of the day and the shows that I do. It is just a one take deal. I just record it and post it, and that's it.
Oh yeah, so that leads to it's called Mike on Fire. Is that right?
Yeah.
Your your leadership ethics and organization podcast, Mike on Fire, and I'll definitely include that in. And then there'll be a link to your course as well. And that's it. You've got those 3 things that you're working on right now at the moment. Anything else?
Oh man, there's all kinds of other stuff, but that's the beauty of autonomy. It's just, there's so many diverse things. There's so many fun stuff. I guess I'll give a couple plugs to a lot of the different things that are going on in autonomy. I mean, like the Great Books group that we've got, that I just love going to that. We've got Toasters. I think you mentioned that on Tyler's show the other day. But
did you watch that?
It's a great experience. Yeah, I got to catch most of that. There's the Trivium discussion and logic, and there's
I know
Linux for people that are interested in Linux. We've got
Linux,
it looks like a beginning of a Linux group.
Daniel McCarthy's got his Utopia stuff going on. Eric's got his Constitution course going on. Brett Venant, School Sucks Project. He involves the autonomizers quite a bit on his podcast. There's just so much going on.
Then we've got entrepreneurs and business people and homeschooling advocates, unschooling advocates coming in. So there's all kinds of different opportunities to be exposed to all kinds of different ideologies and understandings and talents and knowledge. Just it goes in a lot of different directions, and I think it's just going to keep expanding. We didn't mention, I don't know if you want to mention, we've got an autonomy radio project that's kind of in the works somewhere along the way.
That's true. That's
you and Tyler talk about that at all?
No, I forgot about that. Yeah, autonomy radio. Are you involved in that?
I believe it or not, I am. I don't know how much I'm involved. I'm definitely not a technical expert. But I definitely want to see it succeed, because I think it is another way that we can, broadcast the message to a larger group of people and get some more awareness of what's going on here. But it's very exciting times, because there's just a lot of good things going on. And, that's kind of one of the things. It's, what is it, Hamlet? That it's the best of times and it was the worst of times.
No, that was Charles Dickens from A Tale of
Charles
Two
Dickens.
Cities.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I know I read that somewhere. But it is one in which there's always the inverse. There's always the other side. It's always the opposite that's available. And if something is going wrong and going off the cliff in the wrong direction, there's always an opportunity to look the other way. What is the other option? What are the other options out there? And that's, I think autonomy is doing a great job of representing something that's incredibly different than what people are experiencing what I guess they call the real world, but it's their own crazy world.
Yeah, absolutely. And, kudos to Richard Grove and Lisa.
Beautiful thing
for what they've done. Mike, let's finish with a little exercise
I
in
lost
you
you.
overcoming your.
It's mine.
Let's finish with a little exercise where you overcome your fear. So imagine I'm a waiter up the street and you come in and you want to order in Spanish, you want a coffee. Come on, let's see what you got.
Tu es café? Is that what I would say?
Tu es café? No. Un café. There, that's it.
Un
It's
café?
easier. Yeah.
Un café, por favor?
Yeah. What you said to me was it is a coffee. But that's, you're getting there. Yeah.
See, there you go.
And Mike,
now I'm going to be...
Serious question. How do you take your coffee? Do you put milk in it or black or what?
Yeah, I do milk, or if I can find cream, I'll get cream and honey. I love local honey.
Here we go. So, Mike, un café con leche.
Un café leche?
Un café con leche.
Un café con leche.
Yeah, con miel.
Con miel.
Yeah, with honey.
Por
there
favor.
You go. Excellent.
Muchas gracias.
Well, let's finish there, Mike. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. Really appreciate it.
Walking down the street, the children play. For them, it's just another day. The future's reflected in their parents' faces, who chose to stay on in this place. Where they were born, went to school, got married, had kids, like their grandparents before them did. Got to escape, before it's too late. Although today I could say that I really will miss the buen Santa. Santa. But yeah, I was right. Knew what it was like when Santa. When Santa.
You've been listening to truthconduit.com with Chris McMillan. Go to the subscribe page and sign up to get notifications of the latest posts. And check out the support page to help keep it going.
Yeah, I've got a friend in Jesus Christ. I've got a friend in Jesus Christ, and Krishna and Buddha and my bartender.